Mr. Gaffney, can I have a motion to reconvene the public session?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're now back in public session. We are moving on to Section 5, routine business. We have item A, the board secretary report for July of '23, the treasurer's report for July of '23, the budget receipts and transfers for July of '23, the monthly transfer report for August of '23, the high school activities report for August of '23, the food service management cost performance for July and August of '23, the certified bill list for the period ending September 20th, 2023, and approval of minutes, the regular meeting on August 29th, and the executive session on August 29th. Mr. Bromhall, can I have a motion to approve Section 5, routine business, items A through H?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Kenny. Comments or questions from the board? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. Ms. Blystein?
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion approved. Moving on to Section 6, routine matters. We have the enrollment report for September, as of September 22nd, 2023. No health report, the fire alarm report for August of '23, the crisis drill report for August of '23, no HIB report this month, and the superintendent's monthly report. Mr. Capello.
Thank you, Mrs. Fitzwater. I'd like to thank members of the public who are here with us this evening, and also like to recognize and thank the members of the public who may be watching on our live stream at home. This is our first meeting since we've reopened schools for the 23-24 school year. I'd like to thank all of our teachers, administrators, support staff, custodians, and everyone who helped make a successful launch to the school year and welcoming back now our over 2,900 students to Cinnaminson. For those of you keeping score, that's approximately 65 more than we opened with last year, continuing a trend of about 13 years in a row of student enrollment growth. For all of our sports, clubs, and activities that are off to a successful start, I wish them the very best of luck, including our marching band, who is off to an excellent competition season. We're about halfway through back to school night season. I know for many of our parents, we had an opportunity to attend back to school night at New Albany and Rush last week. Thank you to our principals who are here with us this evening, putting on two very excellent events, and we look forward to the middle school and the high school back to school nights, which are later this week. Construction has begun on the above-ground fuel tank project located behind the high school, and we're looking forward to a quick process and closing the books on this multi-year project for the improvement of the district. The weather has not necessarily been our friend. In addition to the rain from the last few days, a couple of events have been impacted by the weather. Most recently, our Relay for Life, which could not tip off, but I did want to recognize the efforts of Mrs. Marescu, Mrs. DiClementi, who put a lot of planning into seeing the event happen, and we'll look forward to those efforts extending into next year for a great event. No doubt that will happen next year. I would also like to recognize the work of Mrs. Turner and Ms. DiClementi for an excellent Cinnaminson festival that was also impacted by the weather, but we did have a very nice student turnout at that event despite the weather. At this time, I'd also like to recognize the services of Ms. Katie Quinn, a member of the Board of Education, for her 6 years of dedicated service to the students of Cinnaminson, and we look forward to welcoming her back early next year to formally recognize her on behalf of the Board of Education. A little later this evening, we're going to hear once again from Dr. Goulburn, who gave us a presentation last month on some of the student assessments, and we look forward to his presentation again this evening. And looking forward at our Board of Education meeting schedule in the month of October, we'll look forward to welcoming Ms. Jeannie Apt and learning a little bit more about the elementary literacy program here in Cinnaminson. And then beyond that, in the month of November, we recognize Youth in Board Service. That's always a favorite board meeting among the folks here up at the dais. And then in the month of December, we will get to hear from Mrs. Llewellyn and the members of the Child Study Team and Special Education Department to learn an update on what is happening there. So with that, Mrs. Fitzwater, that is the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Capello. Ms. Syacone, can I have a motion to approve Section 6, routine matters, items A through F?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Turner. Comments or questions from the board? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. Mr. Evans?
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion approved. Moving on to Section 7, the student representative reports. It is September, and we have new student reps this year at the high school. We're going to hear first from Maddie Hubbard.
Good afternoon.
The students of the month for September will be announced at October's board meeting. Congrats to the newly elected class of 2027 officers, President Dylan Burke, Vice President Mia Passetti, Treasurer Cole Kaprivica, Secretary Alana Kieran, Historian Liv Larmer, and School Council Liaison Gianna Ross. Fall sports teams have started their seasons. Football, the captains are Brian Finnerty and Michael Beers. The football team's record is 5-0 after beating Delran on their home turf 22-9. The next game is September 29th against Bordentown, which is also their senior night. Cheerleaders. The captains are Alexis Daniels, Kayla Meenan, Olivia Arnold, and Olivia Kamaris. Their senior night game is September 29th against Bordentown. Boys soccer. The captains are Mikey Pappas and Tim Morrell. The boys soccer team record is 5-2. The next game is September 28th against Kingsway, and their senior night game is October 14th against Cherry Hill West. Girls soccer. The captains are Caitlin Colfer, Ava Stanilevich, and Bailey Costin. The girls soccer team record is 6-0. Their next game is Wednesday, September 27th against Delran, and their senior night game is October 16th against Northern Burlington. Field hockey. The captains are Maddie Kachuk, Sam Keyports, Caitlin Connolly, and Olivia Marinelli. The field hockey team's record is 3-3. Their next game is Wednesday, September 27th against Our Lady of Mercy, and their senior night game is October 20th against Cedar Creek. Girls tennis. The captains are Grace Kennedy, Riley Cassidy, and Stella Driscoll. The girls tennis team's record is 2-2. The next match is Monday, October 2nd against Haddon Township, and their senior night game is October 12th against Triton Catholic. Boys cross country team. The boys cross country team record is 6-0. Girls cross country. The captains are Anna Marino and Maddie Willers. The team's record is 3-1. Girls volleyball. The captains are Alex Arnold, Lily Surma, and Elizabeth Duong. The girls volleyball team's record is 4-6. Their next game is Wednesday, September 27th against Pinelands. Their senior night is October 10th against Collingswood. Student council. Homecoming 2023 plan is underway. The theme is Biomes, Pirates Survive in Any Environment. Seniors, Tropical Rainforest, juniors, Under the Sea, sophomores, Frozen Tundra, and freshmen, Desert. Spirit Week officially begins with hall decorating on Sunday, October 8th from 1 to 4. The Spirit Week days are Monday, Jersey Day, Tuesday, Terra Tuesday, Way Back Wednesday, seniors are 70s, juniors are 80s, sophomores are 90s, and freshmen is early 2000s. Thursday is Anything But a Backpack, and Friday is Class Color Day, which also is Homecoming Pep Rally. Friday night is Homecoming football game, with the homecoming court being introduced at halftime after the band's halftime performance. On Saturday, October 14th, the homecoming dance is 7 to 10 p.m. in the commitment gym, and the winner of the Spirit Stick will be announced. Freshman/new student orientation. On Wednesday, August 30th, CHS held freshman and new student orientation. The students were greeted by the CHS pep band and a group of CHS cheerleaders. Once inside, student council officers and class officers helped freshmen join the class of 2027 Google Classroom, where they were able to get all their information for the next 4 years. After joining Google Classroom, they received their first of many Class of 2027 t-shirts, which are designed and printed by CHS Class of 2023 graduate Jack Shallow. Next, they entered the cafeteria and sat in groups to create teams to stay engaged in many activities. Prior to the end of the day's barbecue, all students had a group photo taken. At the end of the barbecue, they joined their parents and guardians for an information session. Good luck to the newest students at the Class of 2027. Interact. Interact is currently working on the year's plans and activities. National Honor Society. The National Honor Society has started their year strong, helping out freshmen and new students get acclimated to the school throughout the building during freshman orientation and other events. The NHS will begin after-school tutoring on Tuesdays starting October 24th. Also, the NHS will be helping out on back-to-school night on September 28th. DECA. This month, Cinnaminson DECA began in its recruitment of new and returning members. Officers have visited all business education classes to present a slideshow about DECA. Preparation for upcoming fundraisers and community service events is underway. Cinnaminson DECA held its first meeting on Wednesday, September 20th, with approximately 60 students in attendance. Thank you.
Thank you, Maddie. Welcome. Anyone have any comments?
Nice job.
Thank
I'd
you.
just like to go on record and say that anything but the backpack day is We have some very, very creative students at the high school, so challenge given.
I also like their different things this year. The desert and the eco-friendly aspect of their.
Nightmare.
Now we will hear from the middle school student representative, Kathy Vo.
Good evening. My name is Kathy Bell, and I am honored to be your middle school Board of Education liaison this year. For the past couple of years, I've joined the choir, and in 6th grade, I joined CSS, directed by Mrs. Sigmund. I've sung my entire life. When I finally started middle school, I really expressed that voice. I hope to do great things for my middle school, along with my student council members. Furthermore, the student council election was held in June of 2023. The candidates presented their video speeches and the student body voted during homeroom. The officers for the 2024-2023 school year are as follows. President Reed Hobson, Vice President Lucas Freed, Secretary Jana Lebinsky, Treasurer Jackson Lane, Board of Education Liaison, myself, Kathy Vo, Home and School Liaison, Peyton Parson. The Student of the Month core value for September is perseverance. I will be reporting the students nominated for this core value next month. CMS is celebrating National Hispanic Heritage Month. Students are learning about the histories, cultures, and contributions of American citizens whose ancestors came from Spain, Mexico, the Caribbean, and Central and South America. Students are sharing those contributions on the announcements during homeroom of the month of September. Students prepared to try out for fall sports over the last couple of weeks. The teams are set, and the students are ready to begin playing. Clubs and activities are starting this week as well. We are busy planning the back-to-school activities. Our first activity is a 6th grade only bowling trip on October 9th, as well as a back-to-school dance for 7th and 8th grade on the 20th. October is a busy month. Students will be participating in activities for Week of Respect, Violence and Week, and the Red Women Week. Thank you very much. Have a great evening.
Thanks, Kathy.
Thank you, Kathy. Any comments or questions?
Thank you. Good job.
I just want to clarify something that on the live feed, people are seeing caution tape around our high school representatives. There is actually an air conditioning unit that we are trying to keep everybody away from, just so you know. We are not trapping the students or anything like that. There's a little bit of a switch in the agenda for the rest of you, but number 7 is now other business, and that is the board accepts the resignation for personal reasons of Kathleen Katie Quinn, Board of Education member, effective September 22nd, 2023. And Mr. Kenny, can I get a motion to approve Section 7, Item A?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Turner. Comments or questions from the board? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. Ms. Blystein?
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion approved. Now we're going to Section 8, the presentation by Dr. Goldburn and Mrs. Llewellyn.
All right, good evening, everybody. Last month, we spent some time talking about the results of the high school graduation proficiency assessment that was given to juniors last year. This month, we're going to continue going over more of the results from last spring. We're going to talk about 4 different tests that were administered last year. The New Jersey Student Learning Assessment, which is given to students in grades 3 through 9 in English and mathematics, and students in grades 5, 8, and 11 for science. The Dynamic Learning Map test, which is given to a small portion of our special education students. the access for English language learners, and some of the advanced placement results from Cinnaminson High School last May. So with regard to the NJSLA, say this every year, there is a law called the Every Student Succeeds Act. Prior to that, it was called the No Child Left Behind Act. The official name is the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, and part of that is a stipulation that students in grades 3 through 8 and once in high school are to be assessed annually in English and in mathematics. That's for all states, from coast to coast, and in New Jersey, the name of that assessment is the NJSLA. The results for this test, the official results, we got about a week or two ago. Families who have students who were in grades 3 through 8 and 9th grade last year received their individual student reports in the Genesis Parent Portal last week, so they should be able to see their results as to how the students did. For this particular test, the scores, the range is from 650 to 850, and there are 5 levels of proficiency. It's basically give or take a few points. 650 to 700 is a level 1. 700 to 725 is a level 2, 725 to 749 is a level 3, 750 to 800 is a level 4, and 800 and up is a level 5. As part of our presentation, we're required to give the presentation within 60 days of getting the results. Not only are we to report performance data, but we're also tasked with reporting the participation rate for the school. And with rounding, you can see that it was 99% for Rush, the middle school, and the high school. So the next couple of slides are basically going to be one grade at a time. We're going to look at some bar graphs that are going to compare the results of the students in Cinnaminson with the overall passing rate for the state of New Jersey. Underneath the bar graph is going to be a little table, and it is going to also show what was the average score for the students in Cinnaminson and what was the average score across the state of New Jersey. We always want to have that comparative element when we're reviewing these results. So grade 3, on the left are the English language arts results. On the right is mathematics. Just so everyone knows, they always trend upward after 3rd grade in ELA. This is the children's first experience taking a test that's of a somewhat high-stakes nature. So the green bars, again, are the state of New Jersey. The red bars are Cinnaminson. So in 2022, 42% of the Cinnaminson students in 3rd grade passed the ELA portion of the test, and statewide it was also 42%. This past spring, 46% of the 3rd graders passed the exam, 42% statewide. We look right below it. The average student score in Cinnaminson was a 746. Statewide, it was 739. Our hope, our expectation is always going to be that the red bar is higher than the green one. That is always what we are going to expect in this community. If we look on the right-hand side for mathematics, a 10-point differential in 2022 with Cinnaminson and the state average, and almost 20-point differential this past spring. As we looked across the state, coming out of COVID, it was abundantly apparent that the math instruction suffered much more than English language arts from the effects of remote learning. So that was 3rd grade. Let's skip ahead to 4th grade. We can see this past spring, 54% of the children in 4th grade passed the exam compared to 51% statewide. In mathematics, it was 61% of the students passed the exam, 44% statewide. Again, what were the students assessed on? They were assessed on every single standard that was expected to be taught in that particular grade. So it was a year's worth of data. So it can be, troubling that, we think of, Mr. Smith's quiz that he gave at the end of every Friday where the average is an 87. This is a year's worth of material here. So these are challenging exams. We look at the the scores on the bottom, 2 points ahead of the state average in ELA, 13 points ahead when it comes to mathematics. In fifth grade, 60% of the students passed the exam compared to 53% statewide. 60% passed the mathematics exam compared to 40% statewide. And we can see the score differential there, 3 points higher in English, 16 points higher in mathematics. Moving ahead to sixth grade, 70% of the kids, that'll be the highest number that we see here today, 70% passed the ELA portion of the exam. Substantial jump from 2022 to 2023 on mathematics, but 48% of the students passed the mathematics portion of the exam. Seventh grade, 62% passed in ELA. The lone bar graph in ELA and math, in which red is below green, is in seventh grade math, 32% passed compared to 34% for the state. Once you get to middle school, it can be a bit challenging looking at some of these results because not everybody takes the same test. What I mean by that is, when I get to the next slide, eighth grade, a lot of students who are on the advanced track are about a year ahead, and they will be taking what's in essence is Honors Algebra 1. There is an even smaller group of students who, as seventh graders, take Algebra 1. There was about 10 of them. I can assure you if those 10 were a part of that group, the red bar would be above the green one. In eighth grade, we have a big divergence that I just spoke of. About 50 kids, about 1/4 of the eighth grade class does not take eighth grade math. They take Algebra 1. There's an even smaller sliver, those 10 kids that I said in seventh grade who took Algebra 1, they take geometry. So there's a sizable chunk of the population who's not taking the eighth grade math test. If we were to go out beyond 2022, pre-COVID, when we gave this test every year, the statewide passing rate for the eighth grade math test is usually in the teens or the low 20s. Obviously not something that anyone is proud of, but year in and year out, that tends to be the statewide passing rate. Perhaps the folks devising the test should reflect on that. There's my editorial comment for the evening. On the left-hand side, 69% of the students passed the ELA portion of the test, a substantial jump from last year. And we could take a look at the bottom half as well. The Cinnaminson score was above the state average. Jumping ahead to ninth grade, 65% of the students passed the test last year compared to 52% statewide. In Algebra 1, so this includes about 200 ninth graders and about 50 eighth graders and about 10 seventh graders. 35.3% of them passed the Algebra 1 exam compared to 35% statewide. Geometry, again, if you go back to the very first slide, I talked about this. This is a test that's given to ninth graders. So the ninth graders, if you're a high school student, so anyone who was in Cinnaminson High School who took this test was in ninth grade, which more than likely meant that they were in honors geometry. Also included about 8 to 10 middle school kids who were also in honors geometry, a small sliver of kids who took Algebra 1 as eighth graders and opted to take the on-level geometry course at the high school. But a very, very high passing rate there, 81% of them passed that particular portion of the test. This might make your brain hurt a bit, but this is another way to look at the data. What I just did for the last 8 slides was we looked at one grade level and we compared 2 different sets of students. We compared the kids who were in the seats last May against the kids who were in the seats a year prior. So same content, but a different group of students. This particular chart here for ELA, I'll use my nifty little pointer here. All right, so this is third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade, seventh grade, eighth grade, ninth grade, Cinnaminson School District. The dark purple is last spring. The next, wow, look at my hand fidgeting there. The next one over is the year before. We didn't have testing in '21 as coming out of COVID. We didn't have testing in 2020 because of COVID. The middle bar was the 18-19 school year, 17-18, 16-17. So this can be informative because we can look at this dark purple bar that I'm pointing to right here. So this was grades 3, 4, 5, 6. So these students right here are these students right here. So we can look at the data longitudinally as well as they go through the school system to see how students, as we monitor a cohort of students, as they move through the schools. So we can go all the way down here. These are ninth graders. So here they are right here. They're this little dip right here. Didn't take tests as seventh graders, didn't take a test as sixth graders. Here they are in the middle as fifth graders. Here they are right here as fourth graders. Here they are right here as third graders. So this can be informative looking at it over the long haul. This is the same chart, but this is for mathematics. So we have grade 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This was the 8th grade math that we just talked about. Algebra 1, we said 35% of the students passed. This is how the middle school students did, who were basically, again, honors Algebra 1. This was the 9th graders who took Algebra 1. So there is a bit of a contrast there. But then again, we can look at these different bars and go backwards to see how the students do over the course of their time in our school system. The No Child Left Behind, again, now it's called the Every Student Succeed Act, says you can't just talk about the whole group. You can't just talk about the performance of the total group, but we have to look at different subgroups of our populations as well. So any group of students for which there are at least 10 members of that subgroup, we are required to report out how that group did. So last year, this is district-wide, these are the subgroups for which we're reporting. So we have female, male, Asian, Black, African American, Hispanic, white, students who are bi or multiracial, students who have an IEP, students who have a 504, students who are in the English language learner program, students who are economically disadvantaged, which means in the state of New Jersey, the metric for that is they are either receiving free or reduced lunch. And the one all the way to the right says FIT. FIT means family in transition, which is the phrase that we use for families who are experiencing homelessness. So we can look at these graphs here, these bar graphs, and look at each group by gender, by race, by membership in a program, and look at that as a district to see where some groups are doing well, where some groups are falling a bit behind, and take remedial measures to try to rectify that. So we can see, there are clear, apparent areas where we would wish the bars were much higher than they already are, and I'll talk a bit about that shortly as to what we do with all this data. So this is English Language Arts as a district, and here we have mathematics, and we find that most of the bars a bit lower, our math achievement was compared to English Language Arts, and we see the same dips here that we saw on the previous slide, whereas we have a portion of the population right here, dipping down, back up, dipping down, and again, we'll talk a bit more about that in a moment as to what we plan to do about that. So that was English Language Arts and Mathematics. Students in grades 5, 8, and 11 also sit in May for the science portion of the test. For reasons that I can't explain, it has a totally different scoring system. Instead of 650 to 850, it is from 100 to 300, and instead of 5, there are 4 levels of proficiency. Again, if someone has a child who was in grade 5, 8, or 11 last year, their score report from last spring also was published in the Genesis Parent Portal last Thursday afternoon, I believe it was. So the science results almost always are not where we would like them to be, and that's like that across the state of New Jersey. That's because these students who sat for this exam were not assessed on 1 year's worth of material, they were assessed on 3 years' worth of material. So imagine having a final exam when you were a junior that required you to recall everything that you learned, not just as a junior, but as a sophomore and a freshman as well. So these fifth graders, 40% of them passed the assessment, 27% of the students statewide passed the assessment, were assessed on science skills that were taught in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. So that's a whole lot of material. 185 was the average score in Cinnaminson, 166 for the state. On the right-hand side, at Cinnaminson, we were a bit below the state average. The average score in Cinnaminson was a little bit higher, though. Again, that's a 3-year look back. And many of the subject matters, when you look at state standards, some of them are year by year. English and mathematics, there are standards that are unique to kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade. Some grades, in some content areas, it's by the end of grade 2, by the end of grade 5. So these ones are a bit more challenging. This one is the most challenging as all because some of the standards that are touched on the test that these juniors took are taught in 12th grade. So we can all collectively shake our head at that. But in 11th grade, you're assessed on physics, you're assessed on chemistry, biology, environmental science, and environmental science. Did I say any of them twice? Yeah. Biology, chemistry, physics, environmental science, earth science. Those are 5 courses. You've only got 4 years. Some students might be able to take them all, but they took this course towards the end of their junior year. So again, and the folks from the Department of Education will freely admit that the science out of all of them is the most challenging because again, it's 3 years worth of material. Subgroup data, just as we looked at for ELA and mathematics, similar pattern that we saw on the previous 2 slides. You'll notice all the way to the right, the one that said FIT, Family in Transition, for students experiencing homelessness is no longer on the chart. That was because we fell below the number 10, so we're no longer reporting that subgroup. But again, work to be done, which we'll talk about in a moment. So what do we do with all this data? First off, it's always been our philosophy that this is one of multiple measures that we look at when we are assessing our performance. It's not going to be, everything doesn't ride on this. We have benchmarks that we have classroom grades and other assessments that we use to reflect upon our programs. Nevertheless, we are given specific data from the NJDOE, which lets us know standard by standard how our students did. Which ones we exceeded state averages on, which ones we were like right in the middle, and which ones we may have trailed on. And I'll talk about some of them in a moment. We have in-service days. We had 2 in September. We have 3 in November. We have 1 towards the end of the year, in which we spend time reviewing data and pivoting where need be. To help remedy this, we offer after-school tutoring. We have Title I tutoring that usually begins around late October and runs through the month of May. And we invite students, again, using multiple measures, using different criteria to see who may need additional support in English language arts, in mathematics, for our English language learners. We also applied for a high-impact tutoring grant, which was made available for New Jersey schools, and we're waiting to hear about that. That would be something that could happen during the school day for students who we feel are most in need. As part of the budget process last year, the board approved the hiring of an additional mathematics teacher here at the middle school to help bring down class sizes a bit. The middle school administration also recommended a modification to the bell schedule, which added some more time at the 7th grade level to be able to adequately address the standards for 7th grade math. And throughout the year, we give benchmark exams as we use in English language arts, in mathematics, to see how students are doing relative to the grade level standards that they are expected to be able to master at the end of the year. Teachers have small groups in which they work with kids based on their ability level. So specifically, In English language arts, we looked at the results that we got back. At the elementary level, the students did exceptionally well. If we went back 15 slides from now, every red bar was above the green. But where there were, deficiencies, and I use that word lightly, they were more on the writing side of English language arts than in writing. So they will be using time in our upcoming PD days to talk about ways to workshop that, to work with students to enhance their writing skills. A recurring area that we always strive to do better on is if everyone in the room, maybe not the students who are here, but when we all think back to our English experiences in high school, what did we read? We read literature. We read fiction. The standards now call for a balance of both reading fiction and reading nonfiction. So a lot of the texts that students have to read on these assessments are not just about, the Three Little Pigs or something like that, but they have to read some scientific text, which may be, and it pains me as a former science teacher to say, may not be as exciting as reading literature. Or perhaps it's reading historical text and responding to questions about it. Reading, a scientific passage and then answering, what did the author mean when they used this word on line 32? Those are some of the skills that at the secondary level we'll continue to work on. In mathematics, there were some just plain as day sequencing issues. There were areas in which the students didn't do as well compared to the state because quite simply the material was taught after the test was given. The students in the middle school took the test, May 15th. The last day of school was June 15th. There was still a month to go. So you do the best you can to cover the material, and that was geometry and statistics in some of the middle school grades. And the teachers will be looking, our department supervisor will be looking to dedicate more time to some of the topics that are listed there, ratios, expressions, equations, giving them more time, more practice time for the students to work with them leading up to the tests when they come in May. And the very last one, the science portion of the test. Gone are the days in which students are, flipping through flashcards to remember the definitions of terms in science class. That is not what science instruction is all about anymore. When we look at the state standards, the next generation science standards, it's a lot about science as a process, thinking as a scientist, making a claim, making a prediction, planning an experiment, looking at the data. Does the data support the claim that you made? If it did, let's arrive at a conclusion. If it does not, pivot and go in a different direction. A lot of the questions involve that. So our teachers have been spending more time. Our elementary teachers spend a lot of time on the second day of school reviewing this process of claim, evidence, and reasoning. And that's complicated. It's not easy. It's a challenging aspect of the science program, and we're continuing to work on that. You'll hear from me in a few moments, but right now I'm going to turn it back over to my colleague, Mrs. Llewellyn, who's going to talk about the dynamic learning maps, the DLM.
Thank you, Dr. Goldburn. So dynamic learning maps. So what are the dynamic learning maps, or DLM as the short version? It's a collection of assessments that basically referred to as testlets, small little testlets that our students are taking. They measure the academic achievement of our students that have the most significant cognitive disabilities in grades 3 through 8 and 11. The testlets these assessments are based on they're called the essential elements, and these essential elements are similar to the standards in our curriculum. The New Jersey essential elements are grade level specific expectations that are related to those standards for students in the general education population. These are a tiered assessment driven by the individual student responses and their accuracy on those assessments. So who takes the DLM? At our students' IEP meeting every year at the annual meeting, the team will complete this criteria assessment or their survey that is developed by DLM to determine if the student is appropriate for the DLM assessment instead of or in lieu of the 18 district-wide students participated in the DLM, and that is about 1% of our student population. So how is this test administered? So the student's classroom teacher is trained annually sometime in the early winter, because this test is then administered in the early spring, or actually later spring. So the teacher is trained annually on the test, and then that classroom teacher is then responsible for administering those testlets to each student who meets that criteria. Students are assessed over a period of time. The window is early April to late May. It is similar in the but not in the administration portion, because in the administration portion, students work at their own pace. They move forward. They do a little bit each day. It is an online test similar, but it is not a time portion or a 3-day administration in contrast to the NJSLS. Again, these tests are broken down into, and they're released one at a time for the students to work at their own pace, and it's adapted based on the student's performance on that previous test. So how do we understand these test results? Similar to the NJ Science Test, New Jersey Science Test, it is tiered into 4 areas: emerging, approaching target, at target, and advanced. And the at target and advanced are considered the passing scores. The test is a performance level test based on both the subject area and those essential elements. Those assessments are then given during the school year to provide information to the teacher so she or he can guide the instruction throughout that school year. And then we will retest again in our next testing window in April to May of 2024. All right, Dr. Goldburn, I'm turning it back over to you. Thank you.
All right, almost done. The access test is given each year to students who are in our English Language Learner program, and the test assesses 4 areas: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Reading and writing is very straightforward. There is a portion of the test in which the kids have headphones on and they're listening to someone speak, and there's also parts in which they are using a microphone and they are verbalizing their answers. These scores range from a 1 to a 6. Anytime a student scores at the 4.5, they are able to exit the ELL program. That is usually not something that happens in the first sitting. It usually happens through a couple of years through the program. You can all imagine how arduous it would be to try to acquire a second language. And the older the students are, the older you are, the harder it is to acquire a second language. So last year we had 126 students take this assessment, and we can see the average there across the 4 buildings, what the average score was on a range from 1 to 6. There were 5 students who scored at that level 4.5 and were able to exit the program. Just as an aside, I think it was 6 or 7 years ago, there were 26 students in the district who took that test. 26. And now it's 126. So 7 years ago, there was 1 ELL teacher for the entire district. And that lady who just retired last June went from one school to the next, to the next, to the next to meet with her students. This past year, first bullet point there, our board approved the addition of 1 more ELL teacher. So now there is an ELL teacher in each building servicing those particular students, giving them the support that they need to be successful. And we as a district continue to have professional development for all of our teachers on how to have a successful learning environment for those students. Used to be called ESL, English as a Second Language. Then it became English Language Learners, and now these students are referred to as ML, multilingual students. So now that's why it says EL/ML. Last one, advanced placement offered each year in the month of May to some of our high school students for the opportunity to potentially get some college credit. We had 187 tests taken last year. Some students took multiple tests, so it's not necessarily 187 students took the test. Level 3 is considered passing. A very small number of schools may award college credit for that, but it's more likely to be at a level 4 or a level 5. You can see there that 40 students scored. There were 40 level 4 scores, 47 level 5 scores. So those more than likely were able to get students 3, maybe 4, maybe 6, maybe 8 credits, depending on the content area, which at the end of the day could potentially save them tuition and could potentially help someone graduate early if that is their goal. And we can see there, those are the 4 subject matters for which there were at least 10 students. Those were the 4 highest four highest tests: calculus AB, psychology, English language composition, which is the 11th grade test, and statistics. There were a number of other tests that had numbers that were in the 4s, but they had less than 10 students, so we're not able to report that. And that's it. If anyone was looking to see the Phillies, I did not contribute to that, but very important information nonetheless.
Thank you, Dr. Goldberg.
Any questions from any board members about anything?
No, I'm just really impressed that that many students took a statistics AP exam.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to Section 9, which is correspondence to the board. Other than a few emails from parents and community members, all were handled, answered by their respective person. Anyone else have anything else to share? Okay, moving on to Section 10, the committee reports. We had 3 committee meetings this month. We're going to have short minutes read by the chairs of each one. And I just did something I shouldn't have done. And we'll start with the curriculum committee, and the chair for that is Mr. Gaffney.
Thank you. The Curriculum and Student Activities Committee met on September 17th. The committee began with the review of the CUSAC process and the expectations regarding curriculum documents. The many curriculum updates over the last couple of meetings are being completed to ensure that we meet all expectations. The committee then discussed the Choose Love program, which is being used in the district and making lesson plans publicly viewable for all to see. The committee received a report, as Dr. Goldberg mentioned today, on the New Jersey High Impact Tutoring Grant and what it entails. The district, thanks to everyone here, has submitted the grant application and is awaiting news on the status of our application. Lastly, the group discussed possible board goals related to the scope of the committee, and we did talk about them again tonight in executive committee. And the next meeting of our Curriculum and Student Activities Committee has not been scheduled as yet, but I'll get working on that. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Gaffney. And we'll hear from the Personnel Finance Chair, Mr. Bromhall.
Thank you. The Finance Personnel Committee met on a Google Meet on Wednesday, September 13th at 8:15 in the morning. The committee began with a discussion about the settlement agreement with Jewel, which will appear on this evening's agenda. The committee then discussed the district's submission of the New Jersey Department of Education's High Impact Tutoring Grant. Under financial matters, Mrs. Livingood informed the committee members of the status of the middle school HVAC system. Architects and engineers are assisting with bid specs for a replacement system. The fuel tank replacement project is underway at the high school. The Cinnaminson School District is receiving a ROD grant to replace the boilers at the middle school. The word allocation on tonight's agenda for board approval. The committee then spent some time discussing goals and objectives for the 23-24 school year, and the next meeting for the Personnel Finance Committee has not yet been scheduled at this time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bromhall. And lastly, we have our facility and transportation minutes, and they will be presented by that chair, Mr. Kenny.
Thank you. The Facility and Transportation Committee met via Google Meeting also on Monday, September 18th at 7 p.m. Ms. Livingood began the committee meeting with updates regarding the following items. The middle school HVAC system needs to be replaced. The fuel tank replacement project at the high school is underway. A bid opening for the lease purchase of 3 school buses was held on September 19th and is on the agenda for award tonight. The Transportation Department will be using TransFinder in the upcoming months to assist with route design. And the committee spent the balance of the time discussing goals and objectives for the 23-24 school year. And also, the next meeting of the Facilities and Transportation Committee has not been scheduled yet at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kenny. Ms. Blystein, can I have a motion to approve Section 10, Committee Reports, Item A?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Turner. Comments or questions from the board? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. Mr. Evans?
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion approved. Moving on to Section 11, public comment on agenda items. Members of the public are reminded that comments should be limited to items appearing on this meeting's agenda. There will be another opportunity during this meeting to comment on non-agenda items. All members of the public wishing to speak on agenda items should raise their hand to indicate their wish to speak. When called upon, participants should state their first and last name and address clearly for the record. Comments will be limited to a maximum of 4 minutes per person.
I just have a question. With Katie resigning, will the board be having another election to fill in her spot in the remainder?
Thank you, Mrs. Neal. The question for the public who may not have heard it, there was a resignation of a board member earlier on this evening's agenda. The decision regarding filling that position has not been decided at this time, but typically when a member resigns, the board has X number of days to advertise and go out to the public to seek an appointment for that position, so it would be the board's prerogative to appoint someone from a pool of candidates who may apply for it. What makes this particularly difficult is it was a position that was up for election in the upcoming election, so in addition to the 60 days for filling it, there's also a background check requirement, so it logistically may not be possible to get that position filled ahead of what would be a new board that would be seated at the January 2nd reorganization meeting, so that final decision will be made by the board and shared publicly, certainly by the next board meeting. So stay tuned, I guess, is the answer.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. All right, moving on to Section 12, Personnel Certificated. Mr. Capello.
Thank you, Mrs. Fitzwater. I'm under Section 12, Letter A, seeking that the board approve items 1 through 5 as listed in the agenda. Under Letter B, there is one item for the board's approval, under Retirements and Resignations. Under C, Teaching Overloads, seeking the board to approve items 1 through 5 as listed in the agenda. Under Letter D, Advancements on the Salary Guide, seeking the board to approve item number 1. Under Letter E, Extra Duty Appointments, seeking the board to approve items 1 through 12 as listed in the agenda. Under Letter F, Leaves of Absence, there are 3 of them listed by employee number for the board's approval, listed in the agenda. Letter G, Substitute Teachers and Nurses, seeking the board's approval for items 1 through 4 as listed in the agenda. Under Letter H, Tutors, there is 1 for the board's consideration and approval on this evening's agenda. Under Letter I, Student Teachers, seeking the board to approve the 2 student teachers that are listed on the agenda. And under Letter J, Mentor Teachers, seeking the board to approve item number 1 for Mentor Teachers as listed in the agenda. And that is certificated personnel. Mrs. Fitzwater.
Thank you, Mr. Capello. Mr. Evans, can I have a motion to approve Section 12, Personnel Certificated, items A through J?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Gaffney. Comments or questions from the board? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. Ms. Blystein?
Aye.
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 Aye, but I do abstain from 12G, line 3, aye to everything else. Motion approved. Moving on to Section 13, Personnel Non-Certificated. Mr. Capello.
Thank you again, Mrs. Fitzwater. Under Section 13, Personnel Non-Certificated, Letter A, seeking the board's approval on the 3 items that are listed in the agenda. Under Letter B, Appointments, Reappointments, and Adjustments, there are 6 items listed in the agenda for the board's consideration and approval. No job descriptions this evening. Moving down to Letter D, Extra Duty, seeking the board's approval for items 1 through 4 that are listed in the agenda. Under letter E, there are 3 items for the board's consideration and approval on this evening's agenda. Under letter F, seeking the board's approval on items 1 through 3. Under letter G, leaves of absence, there are 2 items for the board's consideration listed in the agenda. Under letter H, statement of assurance, seeking the board's approval for the following statement of assurance, and the item is listed as an attachment in the agenda for the board's consideration and approval. And that is non-certificated personnel. Mrs. Fitzwater?
Thank you, Mr. Capello. Mrs. Turner, can I have a motion to approve Section 13, Personnel Non-Certificated, items A through I?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Kenny. Comments or questions from the board? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. Ms. Blystein?
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion approved. Moving on to Section 14, Curriculum and Instruction. Dr. Goldburn.
Thank you very much. On the 14, letter A, requesting the professional development requests that are attached. Under letter B, field trips, numbers 1 and 2. Nothing under letter C this month. Under letter D, curriculum, numbers 1 and 2. Letter E, requesting approval to submit each school's HIB grade from the previous school year. This is compiled by members of not only the administration, but members of the school community, in which they review a rather lengthy rubric and score the schools following of the expectations of the New Jersey Anti-Bullying Bill of Rights. The scores are out of a possible 78 points. Each school goes through the rubric on their own and tallies up the point totals there, which you can see in the agenda. And letter F, requesting approval of the board's district submission of the NJ High Impact Tutoring Grant.
Thank you, Dr. Goldburn. Mr. Gaffney, can I have a motion to approve Section 14, Curriculum and Instruction, items A through F?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Comments or questions from the board? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. Mr. Evans?
I approve I, except I abstain from Section A, line 31.
Aye. I abstain. 14A, line 34.
Aye to everything. I will abstain. 14A, line 33.
Aye to everything except I abstain from 14A, line 36.
Aye to everything except 14A, line 32.
Aye, except I abstain from 14A, line 30.
Aye to everything except abstaining from 14A, line 35.
Aye, except for line 14A, line 29, for which I abstain. Motion passed. Moving on to Section 15, Special Education. Mrs. Llewellyn.
Thank you, Mrs. Fitzwater. Under letter A, contracts, seeking the board to approve an agreement with Camden County Educational Service Commission as listed in the agenda. Under letter B, student placements, seeking the board to approve the out-of-district placements for the 23-24 school year as attached. Under letter C, consultant agreement, there are none. And that is it for special education. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Llewellyn. Mr. Bromhall, can I have a motion to approve Section 15, Special Education, items A through C?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Comments or questions from the board? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. Ms. Blystein?
Aye.
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 Aye, motion approved. Moving on to Section 16, Policy. Mr. Capello.
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Fitzwater. And the Board Policy Committee is the only committee that did not have a chance to meet this month. We're looking forward to a meeting in the coming weeks. But there are 2 board policies, a policy and a regulation that are on the agenda for consideration on first reading this evening. And they are policies dealing with the school threat assessment teams. So these are mandated policies and governing regulations. So they are appearing on this evening's agenda. And again, this would be for a first reading. So for consideration, policy number 1, item number 1.
Thank you, Mr. Capello. Mrs. Iacone, can I have a motion to approve Section 16, Policy and Regulations, item A?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Comments or questions from the board? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. Ms. Blystone?
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion approved. Moving on to Business and Finance, Ms. Livingood.
Thank you, Mrs. Fitzwater. Under Section A, Grants, Item 1A is that the board accepts the preliminary eligible cost calculations from the state of New Jersey for a regular operating district grant as attached. And Item 1B, that the board accepts the revised funding statement for services under Chapters 192 and 193 as attached. Section B, Finance, Item number 1, that the board approves the acceptance of the settlement agreement offer from Altria as attached. Item number 2, that the board approves the closures of the following scholarships as listed below. Item number 3, that the board accepts the School Alliance Insurance Fund Safety Incentive Program Award in the amount of $5,500 to be credited towards the 23-24 assessments as attached. And item number 4, that the board approves the lease purchase agreement between Cinnaminson Township Board of Ed and Cogent Bank for the purchase of 3 school buses at a cost of $530,000 to be paid over a 5-year period, which was sourced through the bid process provided by the Educational Services Commission of New Jersey as attached. Section C, Operations, Item number 1, that the board authorizes Garrison Architects to amend the long-range facility plan and prepare and submit an other capital project application for the middle school HVAC replacement project for the cafeteria, kitchen, and gym areas. Additionally, the district acknowledges that it will receive no state aid for this HVAC project. And Item D, Contracts, Item number 1, that the board approves the agreement between the Cinnaminson Township and Cinnaminson Board of Education for Class 3 officers for the 23-24 school year is attached. Item number 2, that the board approves the architect of record agreement between Garrison Architects and Cinnaminson Board of Education for the 23-24 school year is attached. Item number 3, that the board approves the agreement for consortium services between Haddon Township and Cinnaminson Board of Education as attached. Item number 4, that the board approves the contract between TransFinder and Cinnaminson School District for a 1-year term with an option to renew as attached. And item number 5, that the board approves the proposal for deaf services to be provided through Gloucester County Special Services for the 23-24 school year as attached. Thank you, Mrs. Fitzwater.
Thank you, Ms. Livingood. And Mr. Kenny, can I have a motion to approve Section 17, Business and Finance, items A through D?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Turner. Comments or questions from the board? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. Mr. Evans?
Aye.
Aye.
I to A through E, except I will vote no on 17D2.
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion approved. We're going into 18, other business. Mr. Capello?
Yes, each year, the Board of Education does some reflection at the end of the year. As a part of that exercise, the board does a self-evaluation and looks at some processes and procedures that can often serve as a springboard for gathering at the beginning of any school year to set some goals and objectives for themselves for this coming school year. So in an exercise that's been done over the course of the last month, the board has set forward some objectives for this school year. And while in a brainstorming exercise, there are any number of avenues that the board could concentrate their efforts, we were able to narrow down to 6 areas of focus. And rather than read those goals to you, I would just mention that the 6 areas that the board is choosing to focus some of its efforts on this year deal with some of our facilities, particularly if you spend any time in our schools over the course of the last couple of weeks for back-to-school nights. You may have heard some recurring themes that we have some square footage and some space issues that the board is looking to address over the course of the year. The board is also looking to do some policy reviews and updates, taking a reflective look at some of our policies, particularly those that may be aging with time. The board is recommitting themselves to public-facing communications and communications with the public. This time last year, we were 1 day separated from a very unfortunate school violence event. Knock on wood, that has not been dominating the headlines of the media. However, it does remain a top priority, this Board of Education, so recommitting ourselves to looking at our student safety and security protocols. There is an annual budget goal which can be outlined with some action items in that document that is attached to the board goals. And finally, a goal related to curriculum and student performance. So those goals are available for the public's review under other business, and we look forward to getting periodic reviews to the public on the district's progress in achieving those goals throughout the school year. So with that, Mrs. Fitzwater, the board would like to approve their goals.
Mr. Evans, can I have a motion to approve Section 18, Other Business, Board of Education Goals?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Kenny. Comments or questions from the board? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. Mr. Fleistein?
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion approved. Moving on to Section 20, Section 19, Public Comment. On other matters, during the public comment section of the meeting, the board will seek public comment on any item. Members of the public are reminded that if they wish to speak when called upon, participants should state their first and last name and address clearly for the record. In accordance with Cinnaminson Board of Education bylaw, comments will be limited to a maximum of 4 minutes per person.
And with that, before we begin the public comment portion of the meeting, I would like to mention one of the conversations that's been had by the board is I see some faces in the audience who have been here and have shared comments with the board previously. On behalf of the board, I would just like to express to members of the public that the board certainly values anyone who takes the time to come and make comment at a school board meeting. And as a part of that process, the board is committed to following up with every person that shares their comments. So if you would please, as a part of leaving your name and address for the record, it gives us not only a mention for the minutes, but also a means by which to follow up, to get a follow-up from the superintendent's office, or perhaps a superintendent with representation from the board through Mrs. Fitzwater, to be able to facilitate a conversation and respond to comments in a follow-up to the comments that are left at the meeting. So we do appreciate and value the public's comment, and we welcome them now. Whoever would like to share, the podium is open for your remarks. At this portion, it is open public comment on anything not necessarily just related to agenda items. We would just ask that you would speak at the podium so that it can be shared online as well. It's right up at the podium if you don't mind, ma'am. It is a very supportive group, I promise.
About 4 minutes, wow. Here?
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
Kristen Miller Ryan, 2529 Pine Street, right up here. The first thing is just the appearance of some of the fields. Since I live here, I've actually reached out to the grounds person, I think his name is Mr. Tyndall, to just see about, like, throughout the whole year, the summer especially, weeds are just growing up along the curb, especially up to the very end. So that's one thing about the property here. The second is for the property over at the high school. A lot of the same type of things I've noticed, weeds. I did reach out to Mr. Gorman. I did speak to Mr. Tyndall on the phone, saying that there's maybe not enough help, maybe not enough in the budget to attend to these matters. Also not being allowed to put pesticides, but I know there's also the ability to use a natural product. So that, and then as we get to the football stadium, not to mention, it just looks really bad. It's like become a dumping ground in the back area, especially where the visitors go. I took a walk through there today just to look at it, and a lot of things could be possibly put away. The buildings just look like shacks if you walk towards the back. I welcome anybody to go and take a look. It just looks pretty sad. My kids are in high school, and of course, it's not due to academics, but it's due to appearance. And I think that, we could actually put a better foot forward to making that area in the back near the football stadium look better. I mentioned this to Mr. Gorman, I mentioned to Mr. Tyndall, I mentioned to Mr. Wilkinson. I don't really think that there's any follow-up in the matter. It just doesn't look great. I think I've even put flowers at the front where the trophy area is, and there's a sign, actually, it looks like it needs to be repainted. I put flowers there last year, probably going to be putting flowers out there today. Just looks like a bunch of weeds, oh, not today. It looks like a bunch of weeds in the area. So I'm just looking to see if there's some group, committee, somebody I can go to have these addressed. Not Mr. Tyndall. Didn't really get a good response there. That's about it. Thank you.
Thank you, we appreciate your comments. And you can expect a follow-up from my office. Any other members of the public who would like to share comments at this time? Ma'am?
My name is Jessica Lattis, 404 Kathleen Avenue. I am a parent of 2 children here. I'm a third-generation resident, and I'm raising my adults here. They are currently 11 and almost 8 in 6th and 2nd grade. My boys walk the same school halls that I did. When I send them to school and hear about their lives outside of our home, I usually have a memory like racing across Rush School Gym on wooden scooters or meeting my best friend at the middle school. We know all of our neighbors, and they sure do know us. All of Memorial Park probably knows who we are, and we know who you are too. Like many of us in town, I have stared at my tiny babies wondering what lies ahead, trying to plot a treasure map someday that they'll follow to a pot of gold on the other side of a rainbow. The tiny babies get bigger, and we're able to see where they thrive and shine. This is a fantastic community to harbor talent and intelligence. But I'm not here to talk about the small-town charm that Cinnaminson has. I'm not here to talk about the comfort you have in knowing that if your kid is riding their bike in traffic, they will be called out on Cinnaminson Neighbors and Friends. I'm here to talk about the limitations that our town has. We send our most precious cargo off for a minimum of 6 to 7 hours a day, some of us for more, so that we can provide for them. We come home and try to feed them as balanced of a diet as we can. We get their homework done and off to sports and after-school activities. We do all of this while we cross our fingers that they'll be healthy, happy, and well-adjusted. We hope when they return home that there has been something learned that day to better their future, further enhance their education and eventual careers. 3 out of 4 members of my family are diagnosed with neurodivergence. One of us was diagnosed as an adult, one finally around age 8, and one of us around age 5. We have all struggled with anxiety and depression. All 4 of us are medicated and living better for it. This doesn't appear to be something limiting to us on the outside. We are fortunate enough to have been able to seek and obtain private diagnoses for our boys. Unfortunately, this wasn't possible until we were in a financial place to do so, and the right people finally heard us. When you peel back the layers of what's underneath, you'll see that there are still hardships and struggles our district is contributing to the perpetuation of. We work hard and are fortunate in our privileged positions, but we need more. We need help. I did not act out in school as a kid. I kept it together, and it came out at home. Learning struggles didn't show when I was younger. They didn't show up until it was too late, and the general directions that I got were to improve my attitude, apply myself, and try harder. As I'm learning about my children and their needs, I'm learning about myself and understanding that I'm not broken, stupid, abnormal, or lazy. I am unique, and I do not check the boxes, and that is okay. I have spent most of my younger life hating the struggles that I could not fix. If I could change anything, it would be that I had understood and learned about my needs when I was school-aged. There is no one to blame. There is now more research and understanding about the diagnoses that run in my family, which allow me to better help my boys. I'm here to speak to the parents who have asked for help and been let down or turned away. I'm here to let the parents know that aren't on the sports sidelines are participating in social activities that I see you. I'm here to look at the parents who are fighting to get adequate and accessible support for their kids. I'm here to get conversations going about topics that nobody wants to talk about or have their children alongside in school. I'm here to help facilitate access to resources to further enhance your children's education and their lives. Silence does not educate. Hush voices do not spread information. For those of you who have never checked the boxes and/or whose kids do not check the boxes, I want to help hold the Cinnaminson School District and the Cinnaminson Board of Education accountable. Silence breeds ignorance. Ignorance breeds denial. Denial breeds isolation. Isolation breeds shame. Shame breeds adversity. I'd like to help change the discourse, move the needle just a bit in a more progressive direction. I'd like to hear the voices in the background drowned out by a volume that is not for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. Appreciate your comments. As I indicated before, I will follow up.
Good evening. My name's Ashley Neild. I live at 1012 Highland Avenue. I'm a therapist of 14 years who provides mental health counseling to children with disabilities. I own my own practice. I've worked with children the whole time, and I've attended many IEP meetings to advocate for kids to get their needs met. On June 13th of 2023, I spoke at a school board meeting and was unknowingly timed and at 4 minutes told to sit down. I was speaking about parents of special ed students comparing their experience to going to battle with their district, not knowing the very next morning I would wake up to a war of my own. I asked this district to pay for a neuropsychological eval for my daughter after the child study team at New Albany School told me my daughter was an enigma. They couldn't figure out why she couldn't learn after basic skills instruction, before school tutoring, after school tutoring, etc., etc., etc. I found, researched, scheduled, waited on a waiting list for a neuropsych doctor to help you all help my child. I did all of the legwork for you. Less than 9 hours after being silenced at a Board of Education meeting, I woke up to an email from that doctor saying the school had contacted her that morning, and if she wanted to be paid, she had to send the neuropsych report only to the school, and they would handle the rest. She canceled our parent feedback session as a result of this communication from the district. On July 5th, I emailed the child study team requesting the doctor be present at my IEP meeting so I could ask her questions regarding the results of her testing, as well as her recommendations to support my child. The response I received from my case manager at New Albany School was that she and the school psychologist could interpret the results instead of a medical doctor who performed a medical evaluation on my child. So now, non-qualified individuals can interpret medical testing. That's not how this works. I went back and forth with the Director of Special Education several times and was told the district is not required to contract with the evaluator for this meeting. They're qualified to interpret medical testing, and if I wanted to talk to the doctor, I could pay her and speak to her myself. We who do not have the same education, training, credentials can interpret medical testing. If you want to talk to her, pay for it yourself. After more emails and more refusal, my husband and I were forced to file a formal complaint this summer with the New Jersey Department of Education Special Education Office. On August 21st, my husband and I were finally given permission to meet with a doctor who performed a medical evaluation on our child, only to find out that she was on a 3-week vacation out of the country and we would have to wait even longer. My child was evaluated by the neuropsychologist on May 9th. We did not get a chance to ask a doctor if our daughter has dyslexia and why she's struggling to learn until September 11th, 2023. There's so much time been wasted. This is not an excellent education. Also this summer, we emailed our case manager from the child study team because all of the books on their summer reading list were above her abilities, and the math above her abilities too. The response we received from our case manager at New Albany School was to do it ourselves. Oh, and hey, don't forget to make it fun for her. My situation, I've been told, is an isolated one by Mr. Capello. That's what you told me at the end of our meeting last week after an hour and a half. And then you stopped yourself and you said, wait, that's not the right word, that's invalidating. It was so much invalidating. This is what special education in Cinnaminson really is.
Thank you, Mrs. Neal.
Hi, my name is Eileen Bleistein. I live on Windsor Drive in Cinnaminson. I did come to speak about something else, but I have to talk about this because I was here when you were cut off during that meeting, and I think when someone's really talking about something so passionate, their child, and the difficulties that they're having, you could at least listen, because we usually have 1 or 2 people here that speak. So to cut someone off in the middle is just really disgraceful. I think you all care, and it appears that you do. This is a running theme with special ed. There are so many complaints. Something has to be done about it. There has to be some kind of, I don't know, survey of all the parents who are in special ed, their feedback, maybe looking at different schools and how they approach it, who has a really excellent program. It needs to be transparent because so many people are coming up here. I mean, that was excellent, beautiful talk that you gave, and I just think that people are pouring their hearts out. They want to be heard and they want to be helped, and that's your job. You are elected to help these people. I know a lot of people say it's the bottom dollar it's the dollar. You can't help them because of money, and it's just not good enough. We have to do better in this town. We have to hear from these people, take a survey, reassess, make it transparent, put it out there, because just looking at this agenda, I'm trying to find the attachments for things that people are not voting for, and they're not here. And it's so difficult to find anything. So it just needs to be easier. The process needs to be easier, and I do appreciate that you're recognizing that you do hear us, because I've spoken here for probably a year, and then to hear the comments at the end thanking, some sports team or some other thing, and not even acknowledging people that come and sit here through a very dry meeting, which we do because we love our kids, and we have enough courage to come up here and talk. It's really important that you do thank us, you do get back to us, and that you address it. Maybe a policy needs to be changed. Maybe you need to create a new one. But you need to be very transparent with the people of this town. We elected you, and we appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Blestein, and I will be following up with you. And I would like to respond just to one thing, because I was remiss after the last meeting for not following up in person. If you want to see a district that has a really great special education program, you're sitting here, and it's Cinnaminson. We have a fantastic group of professionals that educate all of our students. And I do recognize that there are families and there are specific situations where we as a district can learn and continue a conversation and do better. We are always committed to doing better. But I think to paint an entire department or an entire portion of one of the highlights of our district with the same brush is a little unfair. And I don't think anybody is specifically referencing, anything other than the district, right, has an excellent program for special education, but I agree with you. There are specific times and places where we can do better, and I think part of that is continuing the conversation, and I know our board is committed to continuing that conversation, and I'm committed to continuing that conversation. But I would be remiss if I didn't go on record in recognizing the excellent folks that are in our special education department and our child study team. So thank you for your comments. I look forward to following up. Any other members of the public who would like to speak this time?
Good evening. My name is Christopher Sinilovich. I live at 712 Barberry Drive, class of 98, second generation in Cinnaminson. Two things I'd like to say, and I didn't come prepared for this first one, but as far as special ed needs, I spend $1,400 a month on my daughter getting special instructions before school to get tutored before her dyslexia that I also have. That's something, thank you, we can afford, but this community was not able to help my daughter, and so I had to take matters into my own hand and pay for it myself for her to get her treatment for her dyslexia. Just to let you guys know that. That's another topic, but I didn't come here for that today. The question I have for this board is, do you believe every student should be treated equal, not based on gender? And if you guys could yes or no, I would appreciate it. Is that a yes or no?
Sir, feel free to please continue your comments to the board.
I would like to know the board's stance on this matter.
I won't speak on behalf of the board, but I can tell you that the board is committed to equity in the district.
Okay, thank you.
And sir, I look forward to following up with an email conversation, and if there's a conversation that you'd like to have with me in my office, I'm more than happy to have it. Thank you. Any other members of the public who'd like to speak at this time?
Okay, then we'll move on to Section 20, comments from the board. Mrs. Turner?
Good evening. Thank you to Ms. Quinn for your many years of service to our district as a Board of Education member. Good luck and continued success for the fall sports teams. Thank you to Maddie and Kathy for their informative reports. Thank you to Mrs. Llewellyn and Dr. Goulburn for your extensive report on statewide assessments. Thank you to everyone that spoke this evening. We appreciate your feedback. The next regular scheduled board meeting will be October 17th, 7 p.m., right here in the middle school cafeteria. Information can be found on our district website. Thank you.
And that will do it. So, Ms. Blystein, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Turner. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting is adjourned.